In my opinion, there are three main things you need to understand to make an incredible street photograph. If you analyse any of the top images made by the masters of street photography, you'll notice they'll include at least one of these three things, and the best of the best photos combine all three into a single image. So it's really important to understand what they are and how to incorporate them into your own work. In this video, I'll be showing you what these three vital elements are in order of importance, how to improve your ability at capturing these three things individually, as well as some ways you can combine them to make your best work yet. So let's get right into it with the first and least important of these three elements. Now, you might be thinking, what are you talking about? Light. That surely can't be the least important of the three things. Or obviously without light you can't even make a photograph. Well, before you get angry at me in the comments, yes, you can't make a photo without light, but in the context of the formula to make an amazing image, what I mean is the light being considered good in the photo. Let me explain. You know the feeling you get when you see a beautiful photo that shows spectacular light? It might make you feel amazed or mesmerised, and it might conjure up memories of sunsets and sunrises with loved ones, or maybe even make you think back to when you've walked through the streets yourself and sort of notice how particularly beautiful the light was on that day. Light is central to the human experience, which is why light is so sought after in photography. Learning to recognise what is great light and then how to use it in your frame is really important, because the way we use light to show things, conceal things, and also capture a mood or feeling often means the difference between an average photo and a beautiful one. So let's have a quick look at the different kinds of light you can look for and then use in your street photography. So there's the famed golden hour light, that beautiful golden light at sunrise or sunset. This obviously requires being out at the right time of day with the right conditions. And harsh midday light, which is often overlooked as not good for photography, but for street photography it's great. You know, you can take advantage of harsh shadows and contrasty scenes. Maybe it's bright and sunny out, but a bit hazy and overcast where the light is diffused. This can be great for a soft, dreamy feeling, and it looks good on people's skin, and it's great for portraits, candid or posed. Depending on where the light is coming from, it can make a big difference as to the effect it has in your photos. Backlight will cast the subjects into shadow. Side light will give a depth and dimensionality to your subject. And then front light will light up the scene brightly. It's amazing that where you choose to stand affects how different the light can be portrayed in your photos. Light changes all the time, so you might have all the lighting conditions described already in a single day, so it really pays to understand your camera and your settings to make the most of variable light. Then there's artificial light, like the only way to capture scenes in the nighttime, for example, or indoors when there's no windows. And then finally there's the everyday boring flat light, which is sadly all too common in the UK. But I actually like flat dull light because it means you can then focus on the other two parts of the formula without worrying too much about trying to capture amazing light at the same time. Good light is really important in an image, but without really good light, can you still make an incredible photo? In my opinion, absolutely yes, but you need the other two parts of the formula to do that. So let's move on to the next part of the formula and the second most important thing to make a fantastic street photograph. Have you ever been to an art gallery and thought, what is it about this particular painting or photograph that's just so great? Sometimes you can't put your finger on it, but it holds your attention and you can't stop thinking about it after you move on. Well, very often it comes down to how the elements in the frame are composed. For example, you might have found some excellent light, but without a solid understanding of composition, it's unlikely you'll be able to use that light that you found to get the full photographic potential out of the scene. Even without good light, you can still make an excellent photograph by using really strong compositional technique. So what are some common rules of composition, as well as some other compositional techniques we can explore in our own work? Let's start with the widely accepted basic rules of composition, and a bit later on in the video I'll explain how important it is to break these rules, but first we need to understand what they are to then break them with purpose later on. The rule of thirds. This is where you split the frame up into thirds using a grid, and place objects of interest in the intersecting points of the grid. Leading lines. A very simple but effective technique using elements in your image that point to a subject or subjects, keeping the viewer anchored in the scene. The rule of odds. It's been proven that humans are more attracted to images featuring odd numbers of things in them. So for example, it's better to have a singular subject than two. Once we know the basics of composition, there are some other techniques we can incorporate too, for example framing. So you can find objects to use that act as frames in a really powerful way to create depth and visual interest in your images. And then there's colour, which is so emotive, so we can strategically use colour in our images as a compositional tool to make them more impactful and visually pleasing. Abstraction can be polarising, as some people don't get it at all, but humans love puzzles and trying to work things out, so adding abstraction into your work can make for some really fun and unique photos. Equally as abstraction, humans are usually trying to seek balance. So a composition that's well balanced throughout the scene can be very visually appealing. And further on from balance, we have rhythm. Some kind of visual flow we can portray in a shot. Using repeating shapes, for example, can really make a photograph stand out. I could go on and on here because there's so many ways we can experiment with composition, but I'll save that for another video. Once we have an understanding of how to make great compositions and then get really creative with it, we can capture really nice photos even when we're stuck in a boring or quiet place. We can also use the environment to really add depth and visual interest to our photos too. Better still, if we have some great light, then we can combine that with strong compositional technique for really eye-catching images. But there's one last piece of the formula missing, and in my opinion it's the most important thing. So that's what we're going to dive into next. If you're as old as I am, when you were a kid, you might remember having one of these at your birthday party. A trusty old disposable camera. Now, this isn't traditionally something you'd use to make an award-winning photograph with. You had it specifically to capture moments. Precious moments that you wanted to record in a photo album to look back on in the future. I doubt when you were 5 you were paying that much attention to composition and light, and if your parents were using one to record the day, they probably weren't thinking too creatively either. The aim was to capture the moments because that was what mattered most. So for me, that's why the moment is the most important element to making a powerful photograph. Without a meaningful or emotive moment, it's unlikely you will make a really great street photo. Some of you may completely disagree with this, and that's absolutely fine. You might think that light and composition are more important, and I'd love to know what you think in the comments. But for me, the pinnacle of an excellent photo comes from the moment. But having said that, a great moment without thought for light and composition can often mean the photo doesn't work to its full potential. That's why I've titled this video The Formula to an Amazing Street Photo, as I really think you need to have light, composition, and moment to make an outstanding image. But even without great light, you can still make a great photo by capturing a moment composed in an interesting and captivating way. But how do we notice and then capture moments on the street? And what actually is a meaningful moment? Well, that needs a whole separate video, but here are some simple things you can focus on to start capturing more moment-driven street photography. A great way to start is just by people watching. Spend some time in a cafe window just watching people interact and go about their daily lives. The more used to observing people we get, the better we'll become at predicting meaningful moments and interactions to capture with our cameras. Read up on psychology and really observe the world every time you go out with or without your camera. The more you do this, the more in tune you become with the environment, and then the easier it becomes to spot and capture meaningful moments. Confidence is really important to capture those meaningful moments too, but that can be a big problem for many street photographers, and it deserves its own separate video. But to capture moments on the street, it requires a certain level of confidence. Now, I don't mean the confidence to shove your camera in someone's face. I just mean the confidence to be seen taking a photograph and not letting it bother you. So how can we get more confident on the street? Well, you can start off small, photograph people from behind, for example, and then try photographing people through cafe windows with a longer lens. Then maybe try a wider lens and get a bit closer. The more time you spend out on the street, the more chance you have of seeing something interesting and worth photographing happen in front of you. Meaningful moments are so rare, so you really have to be ready to capture them, which means always having a camera on you. And as for what is a meaningful moment, well, that's down to you to decide as the photographer. But if you have an emotional reaction to something on the street, there's a strong chance that others will find that photo really powerful and moving too. If you're just starting out, or even if you've been doing street photography for a while, don't put too much pressure on yourself if you aren't getting the best sort of moment, composition and light regularly. You can focus time on improving each skill, but don't be disheartened if you only start improving at one of the things. In fact, you can capture an incredible photo just by using the light, or just a moment, or just something really well composed. But next we'll talk about some ways you can explore combining light, composition and moment together to make our best work yet. Well, let's have a quick look at some famous masters of photography and how they combine all three elements into sensational photographs. This photograph by Joel Meyerowitz is one of my favourite photographs by him. It has great light and excellent composition, and of course the perfect moment that goes with the sign above the scene. You could, in my opinion, refer to this as a perfect street photo. Light, composition and moment, check. Then this image by Steve McCurry. The moment is so powerful, but the weather and lighting conditions add to the moment, making the scene seem spiritual and ethereal. And of course then there's the composition, with the shape the women have formed huddled together, echoing the vase on the ground. The trees adding a sense of place, and the earthy tones of the women's saris adding to the overall feel of the image. Just a spectacular photo. This photo by Billy D encapsulates an early morning scene in India. The soft diffuse light, balance of people in the frame, as well as well-balanced colour and the right moment of the scene, with that man sort of in the foreground seemingly washing his hair in the street, looking directly at the camera, ticks all the boxes for a spectacular street photo. I could go on and on here, but grab some photo books and have a good look through them yourself to see how the photographers marry light, composition and moment to make captivating photos. One of the best ways to improve, in my opinion, is to get inspiration and see how other photographers make incredible work using these three elements. As we've talked about, there are compositional rules for using light, rules that define what's a good moment or a boring one. I encourage you to explore what is considered to be good light, good moments, good compositions, and then learn the widely considered rules for each. But then break them. The key to improving and growing your skills at street photography, and actually anything creative in my opinion, is to experiment. Sure, learn what it means to do it well and then practice it yourself, but no one wants to see clones of the same photos or artwork as others. Every genre of creative pursuits needs people to push the boundaries and try new things, but that's probably a topic for a whole different video. To really crack the formula to make outstanding street photos, we need to improve our skills for capturing light, composition and moments. So to help you do that, check out this playlist next where I explore these themes in more detail. Or check out this video next which explores how to make great photos even if you're stuck in a boring or quiet place. As always, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in the next video.